Welcome to the next talk of the first International Micro Frontend Summit.
Today we have Parijat Sardesai, Senior Technical Director at Globant, who has major sweet tooth and loves to cycle.
Along with me, meet Rashmi. She's an architect at Globant, and you have to be really careful about her sense of humor.
Do you mean the humor which you don't get?
Okay. Anyways, we go ahead.
Anyways, both of us are joining from Pune, India, where winter is coming.
See, I already warned all of you. Rashmi, we have to stick to the micro frontends.
Yes, I know that. So micro frontend is like microservices we have on the backend. Each application on the micro frontend exists separately with a defined objective. For an example, this is a typical web page. It has header, subheader, home page, profile page, footer, and many more sections. So if you ask me to break it down, these highlighted ones here can be micro apps. This reminds me of a fintech application I have worked upon, and it was developed in monolith architecture before. And the biggest problem I still remember we faced was compile time. Also, refactoring the one page was breaking another, and seriously, it was a nightmare.
So you mean all these problems were solved when you converted it to a micro frontend?
Micro frontend solve a technical problem of asynchronous load, then async release, geographically distributed deliveries, compile time, build time. But inconsistency problem grew drastically. I mean, even it led to increased release time.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate what kind of inconsistency problems?
Sure. So on this slide, we have two examples. Can you identify the differences, Parijat?
I can. I have worked with you on these slides, but maybe you want to explain it to the people who are here.
Yeah. If people have to be careful of my humor, they'll have to be careful of your sarcasm. Anyways, let me summarize that, but I am assuming you are reaching somewhere with it.
I am, once you summarize the problem.
Again. Okay. So if as a user, I have clicked on delete record button, this is the confirmation pop-up. In most of the cases, we would click on left-hand side to cancel the operation and on right side for confirmation. Unless you are working with someone who deliberately want to mess up with your brain. So I think the first one is better. What do you think so, Parijat?
Actually, no. For me, the ideal case scenario would be something like this, where the close button also moves on the right-hand side. I hope you understand what I mean with this, right?
Yeah. I also have worked on the slides.
Okay, let me summarize this problem here. Okay, so if we have a geographically distributed team, uh, and all of them are working on an application where there are components and they need to create bigger components out of them, like this model, they can, if there is no guideline, they can tend to put the various components on the screen at various places, right? This will lead to design inconsistencies as well as non-standard design. I mean, non-standard designs of the application as well. For that, you have to think that, imagine this is just a model right now, and if you this model would be a part of a micro app. Now that micro app will be a part of the entire micro front-end application. So if you extrapolate this small problem to an entire application, think what would happen.
Yes, of course. So do you remember I was talking about fintech application? We had 5 geographically distributed teams working together on one application. And it had happened that due to time zone differences, communication and the coordination between the teams was not as expected.
Yeah, and I know when the communication does not happen, assumptions are made, right?
Yeah. And you know what? Eventually, every team started following their own rule and guideline with assumptions they made, and they started creating their own definition of foundational elements. When I say own definition of foundational elements, I mean like typography, themes, spacing, colors, as it's etc. So in micro front-end architecture, we cannot neglect high chances of conflicting styles. Now, as I said, if every team has own set of guideline and rule, of course they'll follow the same. and following the same, they'll create their own foundations. In this case, there are chances of duplication of dev effort, duplication of code, also extra time is consumed.
So basically, we need a single source of truth, is what you mean, as a guideline, right? And thus, here it comes the design system in picture.
Oh, so by design system, do you mean to say that we'll create a single guideline for everyone to follow?
Actually, it is not that simple. The design system is a standard set of guidelines to manage design at scale. Okay, you have
Mm-hmm.
to think about visual consistency across different pages and channels. It also helps you to reduce redundancy. Okay, now let me try to explain how we can create a design paradigm for an application. Okay, for that, you first need to do a visual audit of the current design, whether that the design is of an app, a website, or any other digital product. Okay, after that, the visual design language has to be created. What does that mean? The visual design language is actually the core of any design system. Okay, it is made up of detectable components that you will have to construct to make your digital product. Okay, your design language is a collection of different categories. Okay, you should consider the role of all these design elements on every component on the screen. Okay, these are like colors, typography, sizing, spacing, even imagery. Okay, after
Okay.
that we move to the next step where we create a component library or a UI pattern library, similar to what we call a storybook, right? Where we
Mm-hmm.
create a set of components, and towards the end, and not the least one, which is document each component and where to use it. All of this has to be considered when we are creating a design system.
Okay, so now I understand it, but do we have any design system pattern which we developers and designers can follow?
Actually, there are certain. Let me try to explain you one of them. It is called the atomic design pattern. We have 5 stages of design in a atomic design pattern. Okay, it is not a linear process, but it is actually a mental model which helps you think of your user interface as both a cohesive whole and a collection of parts at the same time. Okay.
Okay, you just mentioned atom. It always reminds me of its chemistry definition, and I still remember it is smallest invisible, indivisible part of an element. But in design system, we can see atoms.
You don't have to get started again. Okay.
Sorry, sorry.
Okay. Looking at this slide, do you want to really dig into what an atom must be?
Yeah, so connecting to chemistry concept and this slide, I think atoms must be basic building blocks here, like input, buttons, labels. So basically, it must be including elements that can't be broken further, right?
Absolutely correct.
Okay. So I was not kidding, Parijat. Looks like every chemistry definition has relation here. So as I
Mhm.
remember, molecules are group of items bonded together that take a distinct new properties. Molecules are relatively simple group of few elements in design system functioning together as a unit. For example, on the slide, a search input and button can join together to create a search form molecule.
Very good. Precisely. When combined, these abstract atoms suddenly start to have a purpose. Okay. Right now, the button, only a button has no purpose in it. Okay. But when it is combined with a label, the input button suddenly starts to have a meaning. Okay. Clicking the button atom now submits the form. Okay. This results in a simple, portable, reusable component. Okay. You can drop this component anywhere in the application now. Okay, these are meaningful components basically.
Mhm.
So now think
So
about this one.
yeah, so I'm assuming organisms must be relatively complex UI components, composed of group of molecules and atoms.
Actually, these organisms form distinct sections on an interface. Okay,
Mhm.
organisms can consist of similar or dissimilar element types. Okay,
Okay.
here you can see a header organism. You might want to consider like the header organism is like a primary navigation list. Okay, in a search
Mhm.
form. we see that these types of organisms are present in every website. Okay, wherever you visit, all websites have these. Building up from molecules to more elaborate organism provides designers and developers with an important sense of context.
Mhm.
So this one,
Now, friends, it's time to say goodbye to our chemistry analogy. The language of atoms, molecules, and organisms carries with it a helpful hierarchy for us to deliberately construct components of our design system. But ultimately, we must step into the language that is more appropriate for our final output and makes more sense to our clients, bosses, and colleagues. Trying to carry chemistry analogy too far might confuse your stakeholders and cause them to think that you are a bit crazy, which I am, trust me.
which I agree with. Coming back to this, actually templates are page level objects, okay, that place components into a layout and articulate the design's underlying content structure. Okay, looking at this, I explained you what a template is. Now, do you want to take a guess on what pages must be?
Yeah, so looking at this slide, pages must be specific instances of templates that shows what a UI looks like with real representative content in place. Am I right?
Exactly, absolutely correct.
Okay. So now we have understood about challenges with micro front-end architecture. We have
Mhm.
understood design system, but I'm still contemplating how they are linked to each other.
Okay. Uh, Look here. I will show you one funny thing. The design system actually affects all these areas.
So what I understood is design system impacts 360-degree to application.
Yes, it does.
Can
Actually
you can
does.
you can you explain us how?
Okay, let me try to explain this, taking into consideration the various stages of product development. Okay, starting with product design. Okay, design consistency actually improves the visual quality and makes your product, I mean, using your product easier. Okay, this is because, sorry, this is because the same patterns are used throughout all your application. A design system actually defines and standardizes patterns, enabling all
Mhm.
your product teams to stay consistent. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So now let's imagine a girl opens one of e-commerce application. Now she
Mhm.
is not interacting with that app, but with your company. For her, it is
Correct.
not important whether different apps or features within app are built by different or same teams in your company. She expects all of them to work the same.
Actually, she may even expect them to work same as other applications on her phone as well. Once she figures out how a button looks in your app, she will try to look for the pattern. Okay. Because of this, reusing the same component actually reduces the mental load and friction also. And this actually in turn leads to a better conversion rate as well as a better experience, making the users actually choose your app over your competitors. Okay. Now,
Okay.
when it comes to product development, okay, the design system again has a huge impact on the following factors. Okay.
I read this buzz factor for the first time.
You haven't heard the term before this?
I have heard about buzz and factor both, but never together.
Very well said. Very well. I actually want to do this once. Okay, let me do this. Anyways, coming back to the design system with one, sorry, I should stop this. Coming back to the design system from yet another strike of humor from Rashmi. Actually, the buzz factor is somewhat a macabre name for the risk of losing knowledge. Okay, due to a missing team member. Your colleague doesn't has to be run over by a bus for the issue to arise, but actually she might be sick, okay, or on a vacation, or has left your organization and moved on. You have to be prepared for this sort of a situation. And Rashmi, are you prepared for this sort of a situation?
Yeah, Parijat. So you can't scare me now because we know with a very well set up design system, we can be somewhat prepared. Mainly because design system forces you to standardize. On one side, we standardize what and where part of it, like all UI related knowledge is shared in design system, like colors, typography, it is all defined here and only here. This is important because it means if it is not in design system documentation, it does not exist. And on the other side, we also have standardized how part of it, like naming conventions, component usage, methodologies, coding style, and everything is defined here and only here.
Correct. I see that you are a very fast learner.
Can I take it as a compliment for the first time?
No. Moving on, moving on. As I had mentioned earlier, consistency actually helps us, or I mean, across different devices also. Okay, it helps us to reduce the bounce rate as well. I hope you understand what a bounce rate is, right?
Come on, we all do.
Anyways,
Hold on. So now you will say design system impacts release cycle as well. Wow.
actually, it does. Yeah, it does. Let me try to explain this. Actually, give you a hint, and you will be able to figure it out by yourself. Okay. Now imagine that think of this scenario. Okay, there are two teams from Spain and Argentina for the football season.
Mhm.
Both of them developed two buttons. Okay, since there was no guideline earlier, because we are talking about an absence of design system. Okay, they developed two buttons. Both of them were click here buttons, and they placed those buttons into different components, different micro apps. And when those micro apps got integrated into a complete micro front-end application, there was a you can see what sort of a design it brought out, right? Then they
Mhm.
had to again go back to their teams and again talk about consistency, get a common understanding of the consistency, and again come back to the integration hub. Do you want to really think about what will happen if I'm just talking about a button? We want to think about what would happen if we are talking about an entire micro app design system not present.
I really don't want even to think of it because now we have understood design system. I'll follow the same. And following the same, tada, we will have something like this. Because now we know design system, hence we have guideline, rules, documents defined. Along with this, we'll also have component library, which for which building blocks are also defined. Now, even if we have different time zones in team, there won't be any issue as everything is documented. And as I already said, as if it is not documented, it means it does not exist. So every team will follow the same guideline defined at applications root level. Hence, we will have harmony in design and we can see our application something like this.
Correct. Uh, Now let me do one thing. By now we have already spoken about correction of the multi-team consistency problem, communication problem. Let's try to look at it from a different vantage point altogether. Okay, the design system has also a huge impact on app performance. Okay, and since you are one of the people who has been closely working with app performance and its impact on the environment in our organization, do you want to really explain how app performance and design system impacts all these heads?
Yes, as we have discussed about various stages of development cycle and impact of design system on the same. Like for an example, if every team is following single source of design, it will definitely reduce bundle size of an application and
Mhm.
thus will help in boosting app performance and reducing power consumption. As it is very well said that performance is paramount for sustainability.
Correct. So now, to pictorially explain what we have discussed so far, if you don't use a design system, your app would look something like this. When you look at an app like this, what is the first impression on your mind, Rashmi?
I'm like it is so crowded. A lot of operations are here on same page. I see discrepancy in font family and sizes. Even the spacing between links is not tuned properly.
Mhm.
Under this bill payment section, I see unnecessary white space as well. I mean, why do we need it? I'm confused.
Hold on, hold on. Tell me now.
Yeah, this reminds me of my organized bookshelf.
Oh, you read books? I never knew that.
Yeah, I have three.
Okay. I don't want to comment on it. You want to come back to this first of all?
Yeah, don't kill me now. Let me tell you first thing. It is very well framed. Even icons are rendered here. Themes contrast ratio is also considered. Font sizes are consistent. It is uniform. And most importantly, I see it is really easy to use and for seamless user experience. If you use design system, your web page will look like this.
Mhm.
Okay, so today we learned that micro frontend is a website or web app as a composition of features which are owned by independent teams. Each team can have a distinct area of business. Even we had a glimpse of how to break down a web page into micro apps.
Mhm.
While we cannot neglect the fact that in some or the other projects, we may have teams working on different time zones. And when hence we have to have that appropriate communication between them.
Correct. So great. Uh, I mean, by now you have realized that how well a organized design system helps us overcome the primary design level challenges, okay, which arise in a micro front end architecture, right?
Is it because you introduced it?
Oh, yes.
Well, yes, a design system is a boon for micro front-end architecture. And today I understood that design system impacts from design to release phase of a product.
Correct. And I hope you will follow the same onwards.
How can't I? I mean, after all this, I'll definitely and will convey this message to every team member.
Correct. And additionally, you must be happier because you have seen that it impacts the performance and the sustainability parts of the app development cycle as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a brownie point. Now don't tell me that you started craving for brownie.
Okay, this time I'll play along. Yeah, I did. Okay. Well, this brings us to the end of our talk. Thank you all for hearing us and bearing with Rashmi's sense of humor.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.